California Governor Gavin Newsom says if President Trump has his way, there may not be an election in 2028. Newsom delivered that stark outlook at Politico's The California Agenda Sacramento Summit on Wednesday, where he warned that the country could soon slide into authoritarianism. Take a look.
I have 24 Trump 2028 hats. His folks keep sending me.
And you think he's going to run again?
Don't give me. Who spends $200 million on a ballroom at their home and then leaves the house? So this is serious, guys. This is serious.
So it'll be Newsom Trump in 28.
No. This guy doesn't believe in free, fair elections. He tried to wreck this country. Were you there, January 6th? He tried to light democracy on fire. He dialed for 11, almost 12,000 votes. Now he's doing it in plain sight.
Joining us now, senior writer for The Dispatch, David Drucker, and Peter Baker and Rick Wilson have been very patient. Thank you guys for staying with us. David, how seriously should we be taking this warning? Is this a possibility?
Well, I mean, anything's a possibility with Trump, but I don't take this seriously. The president's constitutionally barred from running for a third term. States run elections. Contrary to what he says, states are not agents of the federal government. And so he can't force any state to put him on the ballot in 2028. But the president loves to live rent-free in every Democrat's head if it's possible. And I think that, if you're Gavin Newsom, you're not necessarily doing that. But what you are doing is ginning up support from the Democratic base as you look ahead to the next election and beyond. And it's a good way to garner attention. Now, this is not in any way to downplay Trump, his power grabs, his stretching the bounds of executive authority, and what he would do if he could, if he found out that actually the 22nd Amendment doesn't apply to you. I mean, he would run in perpetuity. But I think we need to be careful about how we talk about this and understand what's possible and what is hyperbole that the president is happy to push to keep voters away from other issues that are more prone to hurt him politically, like the economy, like inflation, like his trade agenda.
So, Rick, to David's point, the president has made comments about wanting to hang on to power in the past and stay there beyond his term. He's also shown world leaders, as you heard there, the Trump 2028 hats in the White House gift shop. But is this serious, or is this trolling the Democrats, as David kind of alluded to? Are they taking the bait here? Are Democrats just falling down the rabbit hole that Trump set out for them?
No, I think both things can be true. He can be trolling, and let's remember, Trump is a gambler. Trump is a guy who has pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And by the way, if it had gone just slightly differently on January 6, 2021, and Congress refused to certify the election, Donald Trump would have returned to the White House. He is a guy who will gamble and push and use that shamelessness and that transgression that's so central to his character to try to get away with stuff. And look, if he could get away with it, he would make a shot at it. Again, I think David is correct. The states still run elections as of today, but. Let's also not forget that there are an awful lot of other Republicans who want to run in 2028. And you can already see J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio and others starting to make their earliest maneuvers without triggering Trump's radar, who are also going to be talking to their people in their home states going, let's not go crazy with Donald this last time.
So, Peter, we've asked this question many times across many platforms. Can he actually do that? So many times we've asked, and the president continues to persist. He's fired members of the Fed board. He is suing law firms. He's going after the head of the CDC. So, to David and Rick's point, states certify elections, but is there a scenario where President Trump can hang on past 2028? Or is this just a bridge that can't be crossed?
Well, look, it's hard to envision what that scenario looks like exactly at the moment because, in fact, there are no obvious avenues. The Constitution is very clear about this. 2 terms, period. That's it. You're done. And yet what we've seen, I think, is many times in the past we have said, or people have said, oh, well, he's just trolling. He wouldn't actually follow through on X, Y, or Z. And then he has tried to follow through on X, Y, or Z. I remember the first term, people said, oh, he'll never try to overturn an election. Well, he did. He did try to overturn an election election he had lost clearly, as he was told by his own attorney general, as he was told by his own campaign staff. And so, I do think we ought to be careful about ruling anything out in terms of things he might try if he sees an avenue forward to doing so. Now, again, it's hard to envision a plausible scenario for how it would work, but right now you have troops in the streets of Washington, D.C. You have the President of the United States reinterpreting the 14th Amendment on birthright citizenship in a way that no other, no court has done in more than a century. He has time and time again shown a willingness to push the boundaries beyond the imagination because we're accustomed to what previous presidents did. And previous presidents understood the Constitution, understood the 22nd Amendment, and stepped down voluntarily without complaining after 2 terms. And here you've got a president who, we ought to be careful when he says something. Remember, he talked about terminating the Constitution while he was out of office in order to return to power because he thought that Biden should be removed in the middle of his term. So I guess I would be careful about ruling anything out, but it is hard to see the avenue for which he would do it at this point. And I think that's, it's also in his interest not just to troll the Democrats and his opponents, but also to maintain his status as the power rather than be seen as a lame duck too early in what would be his last term.
Rick, Newsom also sounded the alarm about American elections, pointing to Trump's recent actions in his own state. Let's listen to that.
As he demobilized our National Guard, he kept hundreds of them through Election Day. And he'll do so working in concert, as he has with ICE and Border Patrol, to do the same. You have the largest private police force in the world. When they're done with this, all that funding and that big, beautiful portrayal allows more resources for this private police force that increasingly is showing a tendency not to swear an oath to the Constitution, but to the President of the United States. And he'll be sending them to voting booths and polling places all across this country.
Rick, do you think that's going to happen? Are we going to see Trump ramp up these deployments of the National Guard, ICE, DHS, the military during elections?
Look, I can't speak to that yet, but Trump enjoys the outrage it generates when he mobilizes federal forces onto the streets who are armed in environments where they're not trained to be for law enforcement purposes or immigration purposes. He enjoys that reaction. He is also, from the dictator's playbook, he wants to desensitize people to the presence of those folks out there all the time. He wants, ICE now has a bigger budget than the Marine Corps. And he loves this gigantic force that is answerable only to him. And he is certainly putting it to maximum effect. I would not be shocked if he did try to apply it as an intimidation tactic during the 2026 election season.